My wife had an affair with my brother, and my family supported them. 3 years after I cut contact, they want my help because he's going to prison? Hey Reddit. This is a story I've been holding on to for years, and even now, I'm not sure how I feel about it. It's a long one, so buckle up. To give some context, I come from a close-knit family, or at least, that's what I thought growing up. I was the oldest of 3 siblings and the one who always tried to set a good example. My brother, Mike, was 2 years younger than me, and we were opposites in every way. I was the responsible, quiet one who focused on academics, while Mike was the life of the party. Then there was our younger sister, Lisa, who was the baby of the family and spoiled by everyone. Growing up, I always felt a sense of duty toward my family. My parents didn't come from money, but they worked hard to provide for us. They drilled into me the importance of loyalty and family unity. I took that to heart. I went to law school because I wanted to help people and, honestly, because I wanted to make my parents proud. I met my wife, Emma, during my last year of law school. She was smart, funny, and beautiful, the kind of person who lit up a room. We dated for a few years before I proposed. Looking back, I realize now that I rushed into things. I was so eager to start a life with her that I ignored the warning signs. One of those signs was how well Emma got along with Mike. At first, I thought it was great. My brother could be charming when he wanted to be, and I liked that they had a friendly relationship. But over time, I started noticing things that didn't sit right with me. They'd laugh at inside jokes I wasn't part of. She'd text him about things that didn't seem important enough to warrant a conversation. I confronted Emma about it once, and she brushed me off, saying that I was being paranoid. Mike, of course, played it off like it was nothing. He even teased me, saying I was jealous because Emma thought he was funnier than me. I laughed it off at the time, but the doubt lingered. We got married in a small ceremony with just family and close friends. Mike was my best man, and Emma looked stunning. For a while, everything seemed perfect. I was building my career as a lawyer, and Emma was working as a graphic designer. Life felt stable. Then, about 2 years into our marriage, everything fell apart. It started with little things. Emma would come home late from work more often. She started being more secretive with her phone, and she seemed distant during conversations. I chalked it up to stress, thinking maybe I wasn't giving her enough attention because of my workload. But then, one night, I got a call from a mutual friend of ours. She told me she had seen Emma out at a restaurant on a date with Mike. My heart sank. I didn't want to believe it. I confronted Emma that night, and she denied everything. She said it was just a misunderstanding and that Mike had been helping her with a surprise for me. She even cried, saying she couldn't believe I'd accuse her of cheating. I wanted to believe her so badly. But something didn't add up, so I started digging. I checked her phone while she was asleep, and what I found confirmed my worst fears. There were texts between her and Mike, flirty, intimate messages that left no room for doubt. They had been having an affair for months. I was devastated. I confronted them both the next day. Emma cried and begged for forgiveness, saying it was a mistake. Mike, on the other hand, was unapologetic. He said they hadn't meant for it to happen, but they had fallen in love. He even had the audacity to tell me that maybe Emma wasn't the right person for me if she could fall for someone else. What hurt the most was my family's reaction. My parents didn't take my side. They said that while what Mike and Emma did was wrong, I should try to forgive them because family is more important than anything. Lisa echoed their sentiments, saying I was being too harsh by refusing to speak to them. I couldn't believe it. My wife had betrayed me, my brother had stabbed me in the back, and now my family was siding with them. It felt like my entire world had been turned upside down. I filed for divorce and cut contact with all of them. I moved to a different city and threw myself into my work. It was the only way I knew how to cope. Therapy helped too, but the betrayal left scars that I'm still dealing with. 3 years passed. I built a new life for myself, far away from the people who had hurt me. Then, out of the blue, I got a call from my mother. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. She started with small talk, asking how I was doing and saying she missed me. I could tell she was building up to something, and sure enough, she eventually got to the point. Mike was in trouble. Apparently, he had gotten involved in some shady business dealings, and now he was facing serious prison time. My mother begged me to help him, saying that I was the only one who could save him. I laughed. I couldn't help it. The audacity of it all was just too much. Here was my family, who had sided with my cheating wife and brother, now asking me to bail him out. I told her no, in no uncertain terms. That wasn't the end of it. Over the next few days, I got calls and messages from Lisa, my dad, and even Emma. They all tried to guilt me into helping Mike, saying that family sticks together no matter what. Emma even had the nerve to say that she had forgiven me for abandoning them, so I should forgive Mike. Forgive me? For abandoning them? The sheer arrogance of that statement left me speechless. I stood my ground. I told them that Mike had made his choices, and now he had to face the consequences. I wasn't going to risk my career or my sanity to help someone who had betrayed me so deeply. They called me selfish and heartless, but I didn't care. For the first time in years, I felt like I was finally standing up for myself. Mike ended up going to prison, and I haven't heard from any of them since. It's been a strange mix of relief and sadness. On one hand, I've lost the family I once thought I had. On the other hand, I've gained a sense of freedom and self-respect that I didn't have before. To anyone reading this who's dealing with betrayal, I just want to say this: you don't owe anyone forgiveness. Sometimes, walking away is the only way to heal. Thanks for reading. Update. Hi everyone. First, I want to say thank you for the overwhelming support and thoughtful advice on my original post. I didn't expect so many people to resonate with my story or take the time to share their own experiences. It means a lot to know I'm not alone in dealing with this kind of betrayal. I thought I'd moved on completely, but life has a funny way of reminding you that the past isn't always done with you. After I refused to help Mike, I honestly expected that to be the end of it. But, of course, my family wasn't going to let things go that easily. A few weeks after I turned them down, I got another call from my mother. I almost ignored it, but a small part of me was curious to see what else they could possibly want. When I picked up, she was crying. She said she didn't know who else to turn to and that Mike's situation was worse than she had initially let on. It turns out Mike wasn't just involved in shady business dealings, he was under investigation for fraud, embezzlement, and something related to tax evasion. Apparently, he had been running a business that was essentially a front for scamming people. His so-called partners had thrown him under the bus to save themselves, leaving him to take the full brunt of the charges. My mom begged me to reconsider, saying that without a good lawyer, Mike was looking at 10 to 15 years in prison. She went on about how this was breaking the family apart and how she couldn't bear to see her son's life ruined. She said he had been through so much since the affair came out and that this could be his last chance to turn his life around. I asked her if Mike had ever apologized for what he did to me. Her response was to skirt the question entirely. She said that Mike was too proud to admit when he was wrong, but that didn't mean he didn't regret what happened. She urged me to see the bigger picture, to think of family, and to set aside my feelings for the greater good. Her words sounded rehearsed, like she had been repeating them over and over to herself before calling me. The call lasted longer than I care to admit because, deep down, I wanted to believe that my mother understood how much pain this had caused me. But every time I thought she might acknowledge my side, she would pivot back to Mike's struggles, his feelings, and his future. It was as if I wasn't even part of the equation, just a tool to solve their problem. When I told her I couldn't help, she became defensive and angry. She accused me of being cold and unforgiving, of turning my back on the family when they needed me most. She said she didn't recognize the person I had become and blamed my decision to cut them off for all the distance between us. I stayed calm, but the conversation left me feeling drained and hurt. It was another reminder that their version of family was conditional, built on obligations and expectations, not love or mutual respect. The calls didn't stop there. My dad reached out next, and unlike my mother, he didn't try to hide his anger. He told me outright that I was selfish and cruel for refusing to help Mike. He said that no matter what Mike had done, he was still my brother and that family meant standing by each other no matter what. I asked him if he had ever stood by me when Mike and Emma betrayed me. His silence spoke volumes. He then shifted the blame onto me, saying that my inability to forgive was what had torn the family apart. Hearing that almost made me laugh because it was so far from the truth. Forgiveness was never the issue. It was their refusal to take accountability, to even acknowledge the damage they had caused, that made reconciliation impossible. I told him that I had no interest in saving a family that saw me as expendable. Then there was Emma. I wasn't surprised when I saw her name pop up on my phone, but it still made my stomach churn. Her message was long, manipulative, and filled with the same excuses she had used 3 years ago. She talked about how she and Mike hadn't planned for any of this to happen, how love sometimes doesn't follow the rules, and how much she missed the bond we used to have. She even claimed that she still cared about me, as if that made any of this better. What angered me the most was her attempt to justify their betrayal. She painted it as something inevitable, something neither of them could control. But what she failed to acknowledge was the deliberate choices they made along the way, the lies, the deceit, the complete disregard for my feelings. It wasn't some tragic love story. It was selfishness, plain and simple. I didn't respond to Emma. I blocked her number and spent the rest of the night trying to process the anger and frustration her message had stirred up. It felt like no matter how far I tried to distance myself, they kept finding ways to pull me back into their mess. My sister Lisa also got involved, trying to act as the mediator. She said she understood my feelings but that I needed to let go of the past for the sake of the family. She tried to guilt me by saying that Mike was sorry, even if he hadn't explicitly apologized, and that I was being stubborn by refusing to give him another chance. I asked her why it was always on me to fix things. Why was I the one expected to forgive and forget while they got to move on without any consequences? She didn't have an answer for that. Instead, she kept repeating that family was all we had and that I would regret pushing them away. By the time I had dealt with all of them, I felt completely drained. It was like they were all reading from the same script, each one trying to guilt and manipulate me into doing what they wanted. Not one of them had asked how I was doing or acknowledged the pain their actions had caused. That night, I sat down and wrote out everything I was feeling. It wasn't for anyone else, just for me. I needed to remind myself why I had made the choices I did and why I couldn't go back. Helping Mike wouldn't have just been a betrayal of myself, it would have been a betrayal of the person I had worked so hard to become over the past 3 years. I had built a new life, one that wasn't defined by the toxic dynamics of my old one. I wasn't going to throw that away for people who had shown me time and time again that they didn't value me. I wish I could say that was the end of it, but there's more to the story. I'll share another update soon.